welcome back to the Own Your Power Lifestyle Show. I'm Coach Simone Kelly, author, intuitive life coach, and Reiki master with Own Your Power Communications. We're a trusted guide to conscious living, intuitive wisdom, and personal growth. And in today's episode, we're covering anxiety or trauma, understanding the root of your stress. And I'm so happy and delighted to have my special guests, Todd and Gina Goodwin, who have been on the show, Own Your Power radio show many, many years ago. And Todd had his own show. What was the name of your show again, Todd?
Inspiring Minds.
Inspiring Minds. That's right. You'll have to link to your old episode. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah,
Great to be
last time
here.
we were on your show, it was in person
Yes, in person.
in a different state.
Now you're in
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
But we see all clients by Zoom, so really it doesn't matter where we are.
Exactly. And I'm in Georgia. So let's talk a little bit about what you guys do first. I'll let the audience know a little bit about your expertise. So Todd and Gina Goodwin have helped thousands of people to overcome unwanted thoughts, emotions, habits, and trauma in a way that's faster than talk therapy, more effective than willpower, and safer than medication. Come on. Todd is one of the few hypnotists, 1 in 500, to earn the title Board Certified Fellow from the National Guild of Hypnotists. He founded Goodwin Hypnosis in 2007 and was joined in 2015 by Gina after she resolved her own grief and trauma through hypnosis. Gina was among the 2% of hypnotists who are board certified. They are also certified master practitioners of NLP, blending neuroscience and behavioral science to create lasting change. The Goodwins help those struggling with anxiety, overwhelm, and low self-confidence, grief, and a traumatic past from coast to coast by Zoom. My goodness, you guys are busy. So let's talk about, and we got to mention, obviously, you're married.
We are.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful mix that you work together. And
Almost 8 years now.
8 years now? My
yeah.
time flies. Wow. Oh, I'm so proud of y'all. Happy for you. Yeah, because marriage ain't easy. I know that.
No.
Been there.
Yeah.
So let's first talk about the difference between anxiety and trauma. The definition, I'll just read real quickly. Anxiety is a state of fear, worry, or unease about the real or imagined threat, usually rooted in the present or future. And then trauma is a deep emotional wound caused by overwhelming or threatening events in the past that the nervous system hasn't fully processed. Now, do you agree with those definitions, or you have anything to add to those?
I mean, they're pretty close.
Anxiety is created or comes about when there was a past pain that your mind remembers, and it creates a future fear. So that's like one reason why people can feel anxious, right?
First of all, to put it clear, we're hypnotists. We're not psychologists. And one of the many differences is that we do not diagnose people. We do not subscribe to or necessarily even believe in the whole idea about diagnosing and labeling things. So when we don't look at someone and say, you have PTSD or you have social anxiety or something. So people will come to us and they'll usually say, I have this, I have that. Honestly, though, Simone, it doesn't matter because those are just words. They're just labels. And quite honestly, it's just people get caught up in what's the definition or, oh, I have this condition or I have that disorder. Quite honestly, it's effectively bullshit. And it is disempowering when people identify with those labels because then they use that to define them. And then they're limited to whatever the parameters or limits of that diagnosis might be. So we don't deal with any of that. Ultimately, what matters is what is the experience that someone has when they have what they might consider to be anxiety. So getting back to the past and the future, I would look at trauma as basically a response to an emotionally upsetting experience. It's not the event. It's how they respond to it, what the person has learned from it, how they remember it, and how they respond and the perceptions that they have developed and maintain as a result of it. Most people have been traumatized, even if you just look at the ACE studies, the adverse childhood experiences studies that showed everything from having a household where there was addiction, divorce, any level of abuse or neglect, mental instability, poverty, right, violence in the community, all kinds of things. So those are things that some of those might be seen as little t traumas. And again, who's to say? So it doesn't mean someone has to be raped or almost murdered or in
Right.
a bad car accident.
Right.
Few people have had those big T traumas compared to the vast majority. Almost everyone has had little t traumas at some point. Even if someone was laughed at or embarrassed in their third grade class or eighth grade class when they gave a presentation and they were laughed at and pointed at, nah, you stop, you can't, whatever. That's traumatic. And something like that, that we as an adult might look back and say, well, why would that still affect me
Yeah.
40 years later? For some people, it does. So we don't look at it as PTSD, even though we've worked with a number of clients clearly who have had major trauma. But
Mhm.
most everyone has little traumas, and so it's how that person responds to something that happened. Someone else experiencing the exact same thing might respond very differently. So it's not what happened;
That's
it's
true.
how we respond and what we learn going forward. And if we learn something that we then anticipate something like that is going to happen again in the future, anything similar, that's going to create, like Gina was saying, that's going to create the anxiety or the fear that we're going to have a repeat of that, seemingly awful experience. And this is a
Right.
completely unconscious thing. Someone doesn't logically say, I'm going to get freaked out, or because the logic doesn't work because we've all tried to talk ourselves out of getting anxious about something. And usually that doesn't work.
Right.
So basically, anxiety is always forward facing because it's the anticipation of some form of negative experience.
Right.
And also, it's the meaning people attach to things, right? Like, because it's our own perceptions of what happened, that's traumatizing us, not what happened. It's
Right.
the meaning you give to it. For example, using his example of standing up in front of the class and doing an oral presentation or book report or something. If you were laughed at or made fun of for some reason, that feels like rejection
Right.
and it doesn't feel good. And so, um, if the meaning you put on that is, "Oh, this must mean that I'm not smart enough. I'm not blank enough," right?
Mhm.
That is the meaning that's being attached to the event. That is what's going to upset the person, believing that
Right.
when it's not true. It's just something that happened that it could be all your friends just kinda poking fun, and then they're not gonna reject you, necessarily, but
Well, and even if they do reject you, there's no universal law that says if people don't like you or judge you, it doesn't mean you're a piece of shit and you're not worth anything. But we often learn that. And usually most of our clients' issues, Simone, and most people's emotional and behavioral challenges have their roots ultimately or their origins in time to childhood.
Yep.
And so
That's so
because
true.
right, so children are much more susceptible to being imprinted with a upsetting experience than an adult.
Mhm.
If a bunch of people laugh at you and point fingers at you, you might have a bad day as a result of that, but it's not going to leave some imprint that's changing your self-image most likely. But if you're 5 or 10 or a teenager, we all know how emotionally fragile a lot of teenagers are, then that kind of thing could potentially scar them for indefinite amount of time until they unlearn the learned disempowering belief. The thing that underscores everything we do and ultimately what we're doing as hypnotists, when you get past the distraction of hypnosis and all of those things, which really it's just a sideshow about what we're really doing is we're helping people unlearn their habitual beliefs and emotional responses and behavioral habits that they learned during their life as a way to deal with the things that happened. So ultimately, we're changing how someone thinks,
Gotcha.
working with them, because people are not born with these issues. They're not born with thought inducing anxiety. People are not born with addictions. I mean, other than, yes, a chemical addiction. If some mother is addicted to crack and has a baby, the baby has a chemical addiction,
Right.
but it's not a psychological addiction. So virtually all emotional and behavioral problems that people have were learned at some point, which means they can unlearn them as long as it's dealt with at a subconscious level, which is where those learnings exist.
Let's talk about
Hypnosis, yeah.
let's talk about the actual 3 core beliefs that fuel anxiety. So, can you share a couple of examples related to that?
Yeah, Gina, you want to jump in?
so, yeah, there's lots of overlap too, but we've tried to separate
Yeah,
these. One is I'm not safe. And, I had a client recently who grew up in somewhere in New York where it was dangerous and there literally was like gunshots firing from building to building. And when she went to the bodega across the street, her mom would have to watch her from the window.
Wow.
So there legit was like no safety, but her mind still believed she wasn't safe. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So she's got this belief that she's just not safe. So I think that's so something that could have been true back then doesn't necessarily mean it's true now, but the
Right.
mind, it's like they haven't caught up, like the imprints there. I'm not safe. Case closed. The other one is I'm not enough. Where that's like I'm not blank enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not
Right.
fast enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable enough, whatever it might be. The other one is worthiness. I'm not worthy, or worth because there's self-worth deficits. You feel your worth less than most people.
Mhm.
And as a result, and if that's true, that just means you're gonna have to work harder to get to where average people are, and they don't have to work as hard as you. Um, and then that could, of course, lead to procrastination, feeling uncomfortable, overeating, all these things to help
Right.
yourself feel better,
Yeah.
shopping, whatever, smoking.
Addictions.
And so, yeah, I'm not worthy, whether it's worthy of love, worthy of success, worthy of good things, worthy of whatever it may be. And then there's
Yeah.
something else interesting too about judgment. And you were going to talk about that.
Yeah. And well, okay. So I do want to say, though, that a common example is when someone doesn't feel they're worthy of love, let's say, or worthy of happiness or whatever. I mean, who's to define these words? But the point
Mm.
is worthy of enjoying their life, of having someone respect them. Those people tend to find themselves in abusive relationships or controlling
Mm.
relationships or relationships with narcissists. And obviously there's overlap there. But when someone doesn't believe that they deserve to to be with someone who respects them or to be treated equally or to have opportunities or to be wealthy or to be healthy for some reason, and again, it's illogical.
Yeah, they don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly, and they may not
Yeah.
even be aware of it, and even if they are, what's frustrating is that we might if we experience that, we might say, "Well, like, where did I get that idea?" I mean, there's no sign, God's not reaching down from the heavens and saying, "You are a failure, you're not worthy."
Right.
No one is like, there's no real judge other than ourselves. Other people may judge us, but ultimately what we believe about ourselves is much more important. But yet, if we're at a very formative stage of learning where we absorb everything, and that's young childhood, and we got the message from a parent, maybe mom and dad divorced when we were 4, and dad left, and we barely ever saw him after that. So we got the sense that it's our fault. If we were lovable enough, he would have stayed. Now, of course, as an adult, we realize that's absurd, but we might realize, especially if he or mom might have said something like that, it's our fault. Maybe we're guilty for even being alive because since we were born, our parents were fighting and it's like we ruined their life. It's not our
Right.
fault. But a lot of kids grow up with that, which is called a crime of existing, where they
Mm.
believe that they effectively committed a crime by being born, and their existence created more stress and drama in the family. And so they basically convict themselves of that crime and they live in a prison of shame because
Right.
there's something wrong with me. And anyway, so ultimately that's the real world effect, even in addition to what Gina said about low self-worth. It can limit net worth, it can limit career advancement, health, because if you don't deserve it, then why the hell should you get it? And if you
Right.
do get it, if you don't believe you deserve it, you're going to sabotage.
I see what you mean when you said there's a little bit of overlap though, Gina, because as you guys are talking about things that people do to avoid, whatever the fear is, or I'm thinking of clients I come across this so many times where clients have had the trauma of being in an abusive relationship or in a bad relationship in general, or that they have this fear so that they not to necessarily repeat being in a relationship, they don't want to be in a relationship at all.
Yep.
Or they're in long distance. They always attract somebody across the ocean, somewhere far away, so it's kinda safe, you know what I
Safe.
mean? So what is that kinda like a combination of anxiety and trauma, or that's
I mean,
kind
I
of
would just say because they're drawn to those relationships for a reason, probably because of their own self-worth issues and what they believe the level of respect they deserve or love or attention or whatever it is. And then, of course, it probably isn't going to work out. and that's crushing, and so of course if you feel terrible about it, you're going to want to avoid it.
Right.
You're going to want to avoid being at like the closeness you said, like the vulnerability. If they're just going to shatter it, if they're just going to use it against you, if they're, whatever might have happened. So
Or they avoid people altogether. I know somebody that
people
she
avoid things to avoid emotional discomfort, and
right.
avoiding something is still doing something.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I want to put all this together here. So, and then I'm going to get onto there's actually a fourth core belief that is potentially more broad and has bigger ramifications than the other three, although there is overlap. If someone has had an abusive relationship or whatever it might be, or even they just have relationship problems because their primary role model were their parents had a
Mhm.
effed up relationship or whatever, they might think subconsciously, like they learned it without being aware, oh, this is what it means to be an adult. That's what
That's
it
your
means to
model.
be married. Right. That sucks. I don't want that. So I'm going to stay single or whatever. It's not a logical thing. They might say, well, I don't want that, but I can't help it. So in fact, every issue we see with clients, it takes that form. I would like to do this, but I keep doing that. Or I wish I could stop feeling this, but I keep feeling that. Or I wish I could stop eating cookies or whatever, but I can't help it. And that's the conscious mind, which is thinking long term and logically, saying the first thing. And then everything after the but is the subconscious, which is the emotional and irrational part. So it thinks short term, it's all about self preservation when it comes to fear related things.
Mhm.
And it's about comfort or avoiding discomfort. So if someone has a belief I'm not safe when I'm in an airplane, so that's a common everyday, not super common, but fear of flying, right?
Right.
They have this irrational belief. It's probably wrong given that flying is the safest form of travel vastly. But
Right.
if they've seen Final Destination or they've seen movies where there's plane crashes,
That's a good
right?
one.
I've seen that, and I love to fly. It doesn't really
I'd
scare
never
me.
seen it. Gina made me watch that. Anyway,
Did I? No.
yeah, it was you. I never seen that before. I'd never seen that, but I had clients when I worked with them for fear of flying, and they said, "Did you ever see Final Destination?" I'm like, "No." Anyway, the point is somehow,
Maybe it's better that way.
somehow, Simone, what they're doing is they're playing a movie in their head, whether it was a real movie or they're just making it up,
Right.
and they're imagining a plane crashing, or they have this belief for whatever reason that this is the one that's going to crash. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's rational or not. It's not. But if they have that belief, if that belief is actually true, if it were true, then thank God that that person gets anxious because their subconscious, which has that belief, which learned it because they weren't born that way, they have the belief that this is going to be a bad experience. Then that creates fear in any of its form: panic, anxiety, overwhelm, stress. It's all fear based. That then is the emotion that spurs action. So the emotion creates a behavior, which is either escape or avoid. So either I'm going to avoid flying altogether, I'm just going to drive across country, or I'm going to get the hell off the plane before they close the door at the last second. And that as much as it's embarrassing and expensive and all those other things,
People do that.
the
Yeah.
the subconscious,
Panic.
again, if the belief is right, which it's not, but if it's correct, then it's saving your life. And so the I'm not safe, either in general, like generalized anxiety, or in specific environments like around lizards or around, tall men with beards or whatever. Those are just either general or specific, and those would be called phobias or aversions. So those are just the subconscious reaction to a belief or perception. Now, when someone has been in a abusive or difficult relationship or remembers their parents, they have memories
Mhm.
that they then respond to traumatically. So the person remembers daddy hitting mommy or remembers the guy yelling or whatever it is. And
It's a trigger.
yeah, so the trigger is anything that looks
It's
or
similar.
sounds or smells similar to the original sensitizing event.
Right.
So the memory is the inaccurate recording of the original experience. And every time the person thinks about it or remembers it, they may be slightly changing that memory.
Right.
And so that's why memories should not be trusted as entirely accurate, because they are not. You're not remembering what happened, you're remembering the last version of the file you saved.
Right.
So anyway, so that would be the trauma. is the memory. The memory and what they think and feel about it is the trauma. It's not the
Yes.
abuse
Yeah.
itself. And then that then can create anxiety
Gotcha.
or some emotional reaction and a behavior. Let me just avoid relationships altogether. Or if I don't feel worthy, then I'm going to break up with this guy when I'm over it. I'm fed up. But
Right.
then I'm going to feel lonely, and then I'm going to be afraid I'll never meet anyone, and then I'm going to get back together with this guy and have another
If you're
broken. Yeah. Well, if you're
lucky,
lucky,
takes you
no,
back.
not if you're lucky. I mean, haven't you had clients where they've broken up and gotten back together half a dozen times with the same person? They cannot, like, it just.
Oh, them, yeah. If it's a dynamic going on with both.
Yeah,
But that's
they love the toxicity, unfortunately.
well, that's because they don't believe they deserve better.
Yeah.
So if I can keep going, there's the fourth belief I think is broadens this beyond just anxiety, and I think that's important because anxiety is just a future oriented fear. But if someone judges an experience as bad, so we'll say maybe the fourth belief is that was bad, and I'll put bad in quotes because it's totally a
Like,
subjective.
that hurt, that was painful, that was
Right.
Yes,
uncomfortable.
right. So let's just say I did something bad. And let's just for a moment accept the term bad. I have a problem with it, but let's just say we're calling it generically bad. Everything's bad or good. I did something bad. I hurt other people because of my actions. Well, then I will feel guilty.
Right.
If you did something to me, Simone, that's bad, I'm going to resent you for it because you did that to me.
Uh-huh.
If I did something and maybe no one else was hurt, but I was hurt, or I just didn't like the outcome, I said that was a bad outcome. That was stupid that I did that. Then that's regret. I regret that.
Right.
If there's a quality in me that I'm judging as bad, like I'm gay or I'm fat or I have ADD, okay, then there's something inherently bad about me, and this is why people who have certain socially unacceptable qualities, traits, whatever you want to call it, and that's been an issue in society in a lot of areas, whether it's
Uh-huh.
skin color, sexual orientation, you name it. If a lot of people judge those things as bad or wrong or broken or inferior, then the person, if they believe that, will feel shame.
Right.
But it's all of this is based on. So then if someone dies, someone you loved, someone you really enjoyed being with, they died, their death is a quote, bad thing. So you're talking about grief, guilt, shame, regret, resentment, and all the variations of that. So if you have a judgment that something happened that's bad, you're naturally out of self-preservation, your subconscious is going to look out for anything that could possibly look like that in the future. And anything that's even close to matching that pattern becomes a trigger.
Yeah.
It says, red alert, it's going to happen again. And then that creates anxiety. So it's the judgment of something being bad that makes you want to avoid that. Because why would you want to experience a bad experience? But if you change how you think of it, this is
Right.
part of the work that we do with people. And there's a variety of ways to get them to change how they think about it subconsciously. So they no longer think of it as bad, but just maybe neutral. And they take the responsibility for judging it. The judgment that a person does unintentionally is what makes it bad. And that judgment is what creates all of the effects, the anxiety, and all of that. So trauma, for example, and grief and all of those other emotions I mentioned are
Uh-huh.
actually self-inflicted
Yeah.
unintentionally. They're learned, they're subjective, they're optional, which means if a person has the awareness to realize what they're actually doing, it's no one's fault. That's just what happens. Then they can actually change it using the right methods and the right approach and free themselves from all that emotional crap. And then that would also remove the anxiety. Because as Gina brilliantly said, if you have a past pain, you're going to have a future fear. But if you no longer perceive it as painful,
Mm.
we're not denying that there were elements of it that sucked, but we're not still dwelling on it. When it's no longer a bad thing, you won't fear something like that happening again. And that is generally the key to clearing trauma and alleviating anxiety.
So let's break down a little bit how it works. If a client comes in with a situation where I'm trying to think of a couple of clients I have that need some help. I'll
Yeah.
be referring them to you. So for instance, I know somebody that he has, as we would call, mommy issues, and so it's hard for him to be with someone that has a life that's busy, that has hobbies, that has other things going on, because his mom left early, or she was in the streets a lot. I forgot exactly what she was doing, maybe drugs, I'm not sure. But so now he can't be with anybody that has a life. Like, he wants the person to be like on him the whole time. So is that like a trauma? That's because he dealt with trauma because his mother was always gone. He felt. I know you don't like to classify things, but I'm calling it like abandonment issues, I guess.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's not
Yeah,
so much trauma, it's fear. It's a fear of abandonment.
yeah.
He's afraid that
That's anxiety then.
more about
We-
what that means. It's like, oh, well, mom wasn't around much. It means I'm probably not worthy of love. And so you
Right.
don't want the woman to be out of the house or out of your sight too much because that only means they don't want to love, or it just reminds you that you're not worthy of love.
You're not lovable.
And then that just acts as evidence.
But he was told that he had trauma or PTSD. I know y'all said that y'all don't go by that. So then how would you help that person?
Well,
I'm
no,
just
we
curious.
might use the word trauma. My point is we just don't get attached to the technical academic definition, because what's the point? I mean, that let's be real people here and not have to be like stuck on, well, you're 84% traumatized, so technically you're not quite trauma. And it's like,
Right.
we're not professors, you know?
Right.
So
I
does
mean, if
this
people
guy,
are struggling and they can't get out of their own way, that's enough right there.
yeah,
It
we don't
varies.
have, it doesn't, we're not judging what shade of gray it is. It doesn't matter. But is this guy clingy? Like, is he clingy?
Um, he has two things. He'll either disappear from everybody because he doesn't want to be bothered, like he's afraid of it, afraid of relationships, or when he gets in relationships, he's like, "Where are you? What? Call me." That like that kind of thing, like very obsessed, and it just causes a lot of heartache for him, and he's always
Well,
calling.
I mean, to me, that sounds like there's a big internal conflict, and he goes back and forth, vacillating back and forth
Mm-hmm.
between feeling alone and then feeling needy, and he needs that constant reassurance or connection. But
Mhm.
then eventually, the undesirable elements of the relationship, whether it's emotional flooding or he feels like he's being controlled, whatever it might be, that causes him to say, fuck it, I'm out. And
Yeah,
then he wants to be alone for a while. But then when being alone builds up the loneliness and he has needs that are being unmet, he will latch on to someone.
yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, because
Okay.
he was the type that he would go on his ex girlfriend's phone, like to look like people that look for stuff. I have a lot of female clients that do that too. Like, you looking for trouble.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
how would you help them? Because I want you to walk through the whole hypnosis process, because a lot of people don't know what you do exactly. So kind of like, how does it work?
Do you want me to go for it, Gina, or you can?
I would go about, I mean, first I would have a consultation,
Okay.
right? And get more details and just ask them a few questions, even though I would know I would have a good sense of what's going on after they fill out, first they have to fill out some forms before they schedule with us. And so we read that and get a better sense of what's going on. And some of our questions are pretty in depth. And, people sometimes we've had clients say that I didn't realize how many problems I had until I started filling this out. But, and just presuming that's what it is fear of abandonment due to worthiness, which is so common,
Hmm.
Yeah.
because if mom wasn't around when he was little, and there's a few things there. Like, I've had people think, if that's, and this is a societal thing, like, if my mom did that, anyone can do that to me,
Right. Right.
because that's my
It's
mom.
common. It's
They're
not.
supposed to
Yeah.
love me
Yeah.
unconditionally, and she's not even home.
Hmm.
So when his girlfriend or whoever he's with isn't home, he starts feeling, because like Todd said earlier, the mind sees, oh, pattern, there it is. There's the
Yeah.
same thing they're doing. They're doing the same thing. It's the same action, but it doesn't mean the same thing. And it never meant that to begin with. He just interpreted it that way. So he has beliefs that, I would say, if he has beliefs that he's not worthy of love, and therefore, and he's also, and it created a fear of abandonment, then I would work on, I mean, you can go into a little more detail on how this is done, but just work on unlearning the fear, because whatever you've learned at that level, you can unlearn and relearn
Yeah.
faster and better ways to help you feel good and safe, that works better than fear, or irrational fear anyway. And so unlearn the fear while building up the self-worth at a subconscious level, whether it's through certain ways of suggesting it, storytelling,
I was gonna ask you, do you do storytelling?
neutralize almost paralyzing emotions using NLP, clear traumatic emotional memories, one or two that might be significant for him that he remembers, that he still remembers to this day, because we all kind of do in certain situations that we've been in.
My mornings are so much better when I start with Ryze. It's packed with mushroom-powered benefits that help me focus, boost my energy, and support my immunity without the crash or jitters. As someone with the ADHD brain, this steady focus is what I need. It's everything. Start your day with Ryze.
What is NLP again?
So NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming,
Okay.
which is, fancy gobbledygook psychobabble for the interaction between your nervous system, language, and how that can influence your emotions and behaviors. So basically, it's a collection of different observations and techniques and models of how we think. And it goes back to the early 70s in academia and has been developed, redeveloped, added to, modified over time. But ultimately, it's simply an extremely effective amplifying tool as a complement to what would be seen as classic hypnosis.
Okay.
So in other words, ultimately, what is hypnosis? It's simply hypnosis is a state of speed learning that we all experience every day automatically, virtually everyone, zoning out while driving, getting emotional while playing a video game or watching a movie or reading a book, getting lost in a state of flow while doing something enjoyable, and then time passes and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I've been doing this for 3 hours. Those are all, or even watching a commercial where they're biting into a lemon or eating chocolate and you start salivating or getting hungry. You know, those are all hypnotic states.
Okay.
So we all experience hypnosis. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of reputational damage done by ignorant media and movies and things like that. I think the only movie that I can think of that actually demonstrated or painted it in a good light was the movie Office Space in 1999. Highly recommended. It's one of the
There was a few things that's, the guy gets stuck in hypnosis, which is impossible.
What about Get Out?
Yeah, no, that's not, by the way, that is not hypnosis. That's, for one thing, that's complete
It's not
science
mind
fiction.
control.
But that's not hypnosis.
That's not
'cause
hypnosis. Okay.
that's like replacing people's brains and drugging them, and that's crazy shit.
Oh,
The problem
no, I'm
is,
talking about that she had like the teacup and she kept doing this and talking.
yeah, that's
slowly.
not, that's
That's
no,
not hypnosis?
that's total bullshit.
Okay.
No,
Sorry.
hypnosis. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
If it were that easy, Simone,
I'll be walking around with a teacup all
By the
day.
way,
whoever I want, and they have no idea what's happening.
that's just the most recent one. There are a number of movies, The Manchurian Candidate back in, what was it, the 50s or 60s, about the fear of communism, and they get the president who's been like, they get the
They
president.
did that over too, I think, in the 80s or 90s.
Yeah, I mean, these are all,
Brainwashing.
look, it all goes to show how fascinating hypnosis is, even though most people are fascinated by something they don't really understand, and they're misjudging it based on the misconceptions that get people interested and excited. Ultimately, it's not that exciting. I mean, it's
using the power of your own mind to get over your own stuff is,
Right.
no. I mean, what you can use it for is great, but people get caught up in the whole hypnosis thing when it's basically
Talk like a chicken. Like they think it's like like
no. I mean, and by the way, what people see in nightclubs or in Vegas stage shows for comedy and entertainment is legitimate hypnosis, but it's
really
but that's different from obviously what we do.
okay.
That's simply helping someone relax enough their inhibitions and their fears so that they don't have stage fright, enhance their imagination enough where they can pretend and almost feel like they really are. I've never actually seen it cluck like a chicken. That's people saying that. It's no hypnotist worth his salt would ever do anything that banal and boring. But the point is, it's basically their imagination is heightened so they can relax into the moment. They don't have stage fright anymore. And so they can do whatever the guy suggests because they want to do it. He's just making it easier for them to do it.
right. They're willing. It's not like
Right. You're not just
if you don't want to do something, you're not going to do it. It doesn't matter.
Right. So when we hypnotize our clients, and the way we do it by Zoom, which is different from how we did it
that part.
before
Yeah,
COVID. So we do some work in real time, but in terms of the hypnosis sessions themselves, we've actually found we get better results the way we do it now than the way we did it when we worked in
person.
for all those years. So I've been doing this 18 years, Gina for 10. And until COVID, we saw people face to face. We had to adapt to doing it remotely by Zoom. There were a few disadvantages, and we adapted our techniques to compensate for that. And I think we've actually gotten better results since. What we do is we record customized hypnosis sessions for people using hypnotic storytelling using directed visualization, using memory reconsolidation. These are 3 processes that actually clear trauma and anxiety at the root and all the other emotional crap that people build up in their life, and actually clear it so they don't have to keep talking about their problems. They don't have to remind themselves. They don't have to try hard. The shift at the root level has taken place, and usually the effects are fairly quick and immediate and long lasting, whatever it is. So we record that, we email it to them. They listen to it every day for a week or so, because we
Okay.
usually see people for a number of weeks and then
Okay.
make several hypnosis recordings for them. So they're sitting in their on their couch or laying on their bed or sitting in a comfy chair or whatever with their eyes closed, listening to an audio. And there is basically self hypnosis. And we're just giving instructions on, okay, imagine this, think this, here's a story, picture
Okay.
that, notice this, and they're shifting their self awareness. And that is basically helping them get into a state of rapid learning where they're very receptive to changing how they think, feel, and act. So we're using the natural state of hypnosis that we all experience. We just know how to bring it
To
about.
put
But
in
the more
there. Yeah.
important thing is what do you say to someone when they're receptive? The media knows and advertisers know what to say. And that's why they get people stressed out when they watch the news, and then they send them to buy alcohol and
And
fast
then it
food.
cuts to commercial for an antidepressant.
Right.
Right.
Right. They
Right.
know exactly what they're doing. I was gonna say news is a big part of causing
Or a
anxiety.
commercial for like
Yeah,
Baskin Robbins or you'll see ice cream, fast food commercials
Hmm.
you'll see that in the middle of the night too for the insomniacs that are awake.
sure.
Right.
And they know that. And so they're being suggested,
Yeah.
hey, this,
So let
this.
me ask you this. So going back to our fake client,
Yeah.
the storytelling part, like how do you based on what his history is, you go, okay, let me tell a story about mom being there, or
No,
like what do you do
not
in the
necessarily.
storytelling?
Well, no, I mean,
I'm just curious. Like
yeah,
how
it
does
can
that
be
work?
any number of things, but what I would probably do with someone like that is, I agree with everything Gina said, but in terms of the like the storytelling, there might be some. Let me take a step back. We all know about fairy tales and parables, whether they're in the Bible or any book or
Like the
stories.
boy who cried wolf,
Yeah.
like if the message is don't scream unless there's an actual emergency,
Right.
Right.
that's received easier if it's put into a story.
Gotcha.
Right. So we can, but we don't always just say specifically stop eating junk food. Now that could work.
Right.
It's just sometimes when you embed that suggestion or you thematically, I mean, this is an art as much as it is science. The science is
I
what it's
like
actually
it.
doing. What's that?
I said I'm a writer, so I'm impressed. I like that. That's why I'm
Oh yeah.
curious. Yeah, the storytelling part goes.
Well, look. So here's the thing. But before written language or before things were written down, however many thousands of years ago, people obviously
Told
communicated
stories.
orally,
Hmm.
and they spoke and they told stories. I mean, what is in the Bible was actually all of that stuff was oral tradition that was eventually written down by a handful of scribes over a few hundred years.
Right.
But it was stories that were told for maybe 1,000 years or more. And then a couple people just through their own filter wrote those things down. That's what we call the Bible.
And edited it. Let's let it,
Yeah,
let
no,
it
for
go.
sure. And I'm not suggesting any of it or whatever degree of it is true or not. That's not the point.
Right. Right.
Fairy tales, are they true? I don't know. But was there someone named Cinderella? Maybe. But the point is, it's a story that conveys a message, and there's all kinds of. The reason that's important is because stories and metaphors activate our imagination, and the
And
imagination.
and when you say it that way in a story, sorry to interrupt you, but when you say it in a story, it makes more sense. And then it clicks and then it registers, which is okay, great, message received versus you should really stop eating junk food. If
Right.
that's put into a story, where the listener is relating to it, they're like, oh, I can relate to this a little,
Mhm.
and the underlying message is to not eat that junk food. It's going to register better because now it makes sense. It's like, oh, okay, because I just heard this, that makes sense. So they can accept it easier.
So in between that they're listening into every day for a couple of weeks, or do they meet with you once a week after to check
Well,
in?
it's
It varies.
customized. It's
Okay.
customized, but typically, a week is a good round number. I mean, when we do a consultation, we get a really good idea of what's going on. People don't even usually need to go into the details of every little thing that happened. I mean, that's what a lot of people can spend months in talk therapy, just getting
Right.
the person up to speed,
Right.
which is actually causes them to lock in with a particular therapist because they think, oh my God, it's going to
I
take
got
me
to
6
start
months.
over again.
The reality is we usually just need, 30, 40 minutes.
Okay.
And we can get a sense by looking at the symptoms, which is what the person presents as their problems. And those are the effects. We can say, okay, it's like looking at weeds in the garden. We don't need to see the roots to know what they look like. We can see all the things above the ground. We're like, okay, based on this, there's probably this belief, this belief, or that belief. And that's causing most of their problems. So rather than dealing with every little symptom, like social anxiety, drinking a little too much wine, sleep issues, negative,
Temper problems.
yeah, anger problems. So someone may have all of those.
It's not about that.
It's not about that. Now, if we deal with each one separately, it might take a very long time. We focus on getting the best results in the shortest amount of time. And so the way we do that is we figure out, okay, what are the beliefs and what are the perceptions that are causing someone to act that way? And it's not rocket science. I mean, it's neuroscience, but it's not, once you know what to look for, we can size it up generally with a high degree of accuracy very quickly. And then we just target our intervention at shifting those beliefs and perceptions and memories. So like we said, what did we say? There's 3 things that are really good for clearing all that. Hypnotic storytelling, that's what we call it. But it's basically just metaphor, imagination, helping someone think about things in a different way that is not so bold, direct, and telling someone what to do. They can imagine it.
So after somebody listens to the hypnosis once a week, give us a little more steps on what happens.
Right. Well, so when we see people a number of times and when we do a consultation, we are able to say, okay, we feel we'll be able to resolve this issue or help you make significant progress in X number of meetings or weeks or something like that. However, we structure a program based on that, based on what we feel we need to do. That will include a number of hypnosis, customized hypnosis recordings. It will include some, for most people, one-on-one. I mean, we meet with people regularly by Zoom during their time,
Okay.
but we're not doing the hypnosis, so to speak, during those Zoom meetings, but we do
Got
some
it.
of the NLP related stuff or the memory work to clear trauma through in real time stuff. So we might, if for example, with client that you mentioned, the fellow who had mommy issues or something, if he has memories that are upsetting to him, and there are ways that we, through some of the techniques we do, we can find, even if he doesn't know, like, I don't know what happened that upsets me so much. He doesn't have to know it consciously. But there are ways that we can tap into that feeling, and then the subconscious says, oh, yeah, here it is. This is what happened. This is when it happened. Now, unlike talk therapy, we don't ask for him to talk about all the things, what happened when, who did this to him, or we don't.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's not necessary. Gina had a client once who was in one of the 3-letter agencies of the government who could not speak.
He came to my office with a gun strapped to his ankle.
Well, hold on. So he couldn't talk about what he saw.
What happened to him?
He
The
couldn't.
alien?
Allowed. He's not.
The alien? No.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, I know this was in Miami, and I know he traveled to Mexico and California a lot. So I think he was
I
involved
knew
in
it.
drug busts.
Oh, okay. I was
And
hoping it was
maybe he
aliens.
shot people, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But clearly someone at any moment could be looking for him and want to shoot him, which is why he had a gun to his ankle every
So
day.
the point is that
He
was a
couldn't
great.
talk about it, and he wasn't allowed to talk about it, which is why he didn't go to therapy, because he can't talk about it.
Right.
And
Right.
his issue was insomnia, which obviously is not the issue. It's a symptom. It's not
Right.
the problem. The problem was whatever was upsetting him, that he might have had some memories. He might have felt really bad about something because that's his job, and he has to do certain things. And so I just went with certain feelings that he wanted to resolve or wanted less of, and just there's ways of like tracing where that's coming from, if it's even coming from somewhere, or it's just something he knows that happened 3 years ago and he can't sleep since.
Right.
And we can clear it, without knowing details. All I need to know is like, okay, from 1 to 10, where's it at now? An 8? Okay.
Oh,
Got it.
wow.
You do a few things for a minute or 2 or so. Then I ask them, "Okay, so when you think about it, how does it feel now?" "Oh, much less."
Like
Usually,
2, 3,
it's a
whatever.
2, maybe a 5, and then you
Right.
just do other things or the same thing again, and you pivot, and where to go from there, with, the tools and techniques that you know. So, I have no idea what happened to him. I frankly don't wanna
I wanna
know,
know.
Yeah.
and great.
So, yeah, so the point with all of that though, Simone, is that someone, whoever it is, doesn't need to talk we don't need those details. Those are,
Right. That's good to
yeah,
know,
and
though.
because some people, they're already putting themselves through enough with what's going on in the back of their head. They don't need
Right.
to vomit it up and talk all about it, and it doesn't improve the outcome. So we can, with minimal detail, like literally a sentence worth of information, we can get it from whatever it is, 7, 8, 9, 10 intensity down to 0, usually 1 or 0. And very often it's in minutes. And once that changes, it's a change in how the brain stores the information. It's completely safe. This is a process people called memory reconsolidation
Mm.
that happens automatically throughout life. Every time, like I said earlier, every time you think about something that happened, you're opening the file in your mind, and it may slightly change, but you can intentionally change it. And there are ways that we know how to do that so that the person still knows exactly what happened, but it doesn't bother them anymore.
Right.
That's where people, when they have flashbacks or they have intrusive thoughts or memories of things that happened, even if it's PTSD and major or objectively large traumas, very often in minutes, we have experienced this with clients. It gets down to where they're feeling minimal or 0 discomfort, and it almost always stays at that level. The reason that's important
Right.
is because those upsetting memories serve as the anchor to hold the limiting beliefs in place.
Right.
So once that is freed and their subconscious doesn't have the evidence that they're not safe, because they remember when they were 4, they were scared shitless and they were almost whatever, something awful seemed to happen to them. So even at 44, they might still be operating from the perspective of the 4-year-old and reacting as though they're still overwhelmed, even though it's not happening. It's because the belief is based on the memory. And when the memory is cleared of the emotional charge, the person still knows exactly what happened, but it doesn't evoke
Doesn't
any
affect them
emotional
as much.
response.
So
And
I
then the
I
belief can change.
I
here's the thing. Go
okay.
This one thing. I know we can just keep going.
I mean, there's a
um,
lot to cover, obviously.
Yeah, this is
a
this
lot of
this
a
couldn't
lot
be
of
no 30-minute show. It had
a
to be
lot of
longer.
a lot of rewiring happens in those sessions because somewhere along the line wires get crossed. Dad left. I'm not worthy of love. Nope, that's not true. Let's
Yeah.
uncross that. It's
Mm.
not, one doesn't mean the other. They're not connected. And then also with every thought we have, there's a feeling attached to it. So thought provokes emotion. So a thought can be remembering a memory, like recalling something from that's something you think about. You're going to feel a certain way. And based on how you feel, you're going to behave a certain way. Either going to avoid something or move towards something or eat stuff that's not good for you or unhealthy coping mechanisms. So to change behavior, you have to go back, change how you feel based on the thought.
Right.
These techniques do with NLP and memory reconsolidation is because thoughts and feelings are attached to each other, like detaches them. So you can have the thought, but the feeling isn't there.
Right. I
So
get
if
what
you don't
you're
feel
saying.
bad about it, you're not going to
It
do things
doesn't
to make yourself feel
phase you.
better.
It
Yeah.
doesn't phase you
So
anymore.
so
I
let
think we'll
me
have to do a part 2 on NLP to go deeper at that. But I wanted to just ask you, do you guys have a lot of military clients or cops or, homicide detectives?
Surprisingly, not
I'm thinking
some
those
we've
people would be the
we've
people
had
that need a lot of help with.
yeah. Okay,
firefighters.
so
Yeah.
here's the thing. They would make an ideal client. We have seen some. The general problem is the culture that they're in.
Yeah.
A macho culture, a tough, so if for
I'm
someone,
fine.
Yeah.
yes,
Nothing's wrong with me.
okay, so one, it's male dominated, and men tend to not like to ask for help as much as women.
Right.
And so they tend to suffer more in their own ways than women. They're less likely to talk about it than women. It's a hormonal difference between men and
Right.
women, quite honestly, that accounts for that. So women are more likely to ask for help. They're more likely to be humble and say, I can't do it all on my own. I need help. That's
Right.
why probably 2/3 of our clients are women and always have been.
Mm.
So the first responders and military are vastly more male than female. That's one. Two, they're supposed to be the heroes and the tough guys. Heroes and tough guys can't be vulnerable, according to the toxic mindset that they're programmed with.
Right.
So
And
for
watching
them,
Superman and all this He-Man, it's like they're the
right,
superheroes, and do you ever see them cry? No.
Right.
right. So the thing
They
is,
don't want to cry
yes.
in front of anybody either. That's a big thing.
So those clients, those people could and have been helped just as well as anyone else. But we don't go around, you know, grabbing people and pulling them into our virtual Zoom office. They have to be willing to acknowledge they have a problem, and they have to realize that, look, as long as you're human, you got shit. Everyone's got shit. Shit happens. You got to learn
Mhm.
how to flush
Yep.
and not let it pile up. And it
Or use it
doesn't
as
make,
fertilizer.
yeah.
Nice analogies, guys.
So it doesn't make, the problem is there's a stigma about mental health or whatever challenges that people experience, and we think there's something wrong with us. Again, getting back to shame. There's nothing wrong with you if this is part of the human condition. Shit happens, a lot of it sticks, and you don't get a medal at the end of your life for carrying a lot of shit with you. I mean, and so there's no pride. There should be no pride about saying, I never had to deal with my problems. It's like, guess what? Your subconscious is going to deal with it, whether it's addiction or it's panic attacks or it's chronic illness. Those things are caused by repressed emotion, usually.
Right.
And when you clear you asked, going back to the beginning, anxiety or trauma often causes anxiety. Trauma is the response to what happened in the past. Anxiety is the emotional response to what could happen in the future. So they're not the same. There is significant overlap, but trauma often causes anxiety. Anxiety does not have to be caused by trauma, but
Gotcha.
both of them are a learned response. Both of them can be unlearned. They are all completely normal, natural, human, and optional. So
I have a
that's it.
question. That was
Yeah.
perfect. Nice to wrap it up. My last question is, how do we know when we need professional help? Because a lot, like, some people like to come to you. How do we know when, okay, at this point, I need help? How
Can
does
I
somebody know?
grab that first for a minute?
Yeah.
Um, they just have to there's no set time or way to know. To me, it's on an individual basis. It has to hurt bad enough for
Mhm.
them to say, "Okay, I don't want this anymore. I don't like what's going on. I don't like how I'm feeling and how it's affecting their life."
Right.
And I sought hypnosis years ago for grief and flashbacks about watching my mom die, and I was in a really really bad shape. I was crying uncontrollably every day to varying degrees for like 2 years, and I was only getting worse, and time was not healing all wounds. It's what you do with that
Yeah.
time. And even if you stuff it down, it's like, all right, well, now you don't feel it, but if you're gonna have to face it one day somehow. And I just was laying in bed one day, 29 years old, and my heart stopped. And then it started. And this was not flutters. This was like legit. I don't know if this is palpitation. I don't know. I've been nervous before where I feel, but like my heart stopped. And a few seconds later, it started up again. And it was just very irregular. Sometimes it was stopping. And I just thought, I need help. That was it. I was like,
Right.
I kind of knew I did. I
Right.
just didn't know what I was
You
going to
gotta
do
go.
because I didn't want to take pills. I didn't want to, I knew I was going to be put on antidepressants or anti anxieties if I went the conventional way. I just knew it. And based on where I was at. And I really wanted to just solve my problem. And then I met Todd not long after that through a mutual friend and was blown away by my results. So how did I know? When it had gotten where where that's just I'm not gonna allow that. I'm like, okay, it's reached a new level now. Like almost getting fired from my corporate job a few times wasn't enough.
Oh,
Waking up crying several nights a week in bed wasn't enough. Like crying myself to sleep. The bad habits I had to help myself cope: drinking more, smoking, eating a bunch of chocolate. That wasn't bad enough for me. And I think that it has to be bad enough for someone
to get
because you
help.
have to be willing to change.
Right.
And
Okay.
yeah, and I want to add one other thing real quick about that, Simone, is that Gina, I 100% agree with what she said, because if someone is not in tune with all of the costs that it has, health, money,
Mhm.
relationship, self-worth, opportunities, sense of well-being. All of these consequences come from any of those limiting beliefs or problematic experiences that we talked about and those emotions. So there are certain things people can do to usually temporarily help themselves, like taking an aspirin. But if you have persistent headaches, unless you're a neurologist, you may not know what's really causing it. Now, it could be dehydration. It could be muscle tension. It could be a tumor. It could be who knows what. It could
Get
be
your
migraine.
eyes checked.
Right.
Yeah.
So the point is, you see an expert who understands how to figure out what it is and how to hopefully fix the problem so the symptom goes away. If your car is not working, you could try to check the oil and buy some aftermarket thing you stick in your gas tank or something. But usually, like for me, if my car is making a weird sound or something's wrong, I'm not going to mess around. I'm going to go to a professional garage or a service person and do it. Now, the mind is obviously more elegant and more complex than a car, but there's only so much most people can do to manage those things. The problem is things like willpower run out, things like logical, rational thinking don't work very well when you get emotional or when you're dealing with subconscious stuff. And that's what, if that were the case, all diets would work. People would quit smoking or stop doing drugs immediately, but they don't. Most people struggle because it's a subconscious issue. And when we try to deal with things at a conscious level, which of course is often the case in talk therapy, which is very helpful for a lot of people in the short term, the problem is therapy can take months or years. And one of the reasons is because it's not necessarily dealing with it at the root cause. It's dealing with a lot of symptoms, and it's not necessarily changing the underlying subconscious landscape that causes all that shit to grow. You do that, everyone is capable, nearly everyone is capable of, dramatic changes in a short amount of time, easily, naturally, and often very quickly, simply because that's how the brain works. Our brains learn very quickly. They're capable of learning, unlearning what we've seen with trauma in 2 minutes, someone going from crying to being neutral. I mean, that's not magic. That's just how the brain works. So if you know which buttons to push, if you know which keyhole to put the key in and you know how to turn it, you can unlock a lot of doors quickly. And so
So the key is like locking doors. The key is subconscious work in our opinion. From everything we know, the way to get there, the road is hypnosis. Like that's the avenue.
So how can people reach you both to book their session with you?
yeah, I mean, our website is www.goodwinhypnosis.com. So just like it sounds, Goodwin, that's our name, hypnosis.com. And we have lots of information on the website if people are into learning and reading about those issues or how we work, videos, lots of stuff. Or on every page, there's a yellow button that says, click here to
book,
schedule a consultation. And then they go through a very brief process, and everyone, before they even meet with us by Zoom, gets to watch an educational video that teaches them most of the stuff they probably don't know, but is super helpful. We touched on some of it here, as well as seeing a lot of clients who have had very similar issues, anxiety, trauma, chief among them, and grief and all those other issues, and what their experience of working with us was that they were generous enough to share. So all of that gives people a good grounding. And then when we meet with them, we'll see what we can do to help. If we can, we'll come up with an outline for a program. And if we can't, we'll wish them well and hopefully refer them to some other, way.
Most people can be helped. Like most people we meet with can be helped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys were just a wealth of information. I learned a lot today. Had a couple of laughs as usual. So I'm so grateful to have you. And we're definitely gonna have to have you back for like a part 2, part 3, because we can talk for hours, right? All right. Hey, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Simone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.